Thought it'd be interesting to do this little experiment. I know it's not terribly scientific, but it's the sample size I have. These are all watches that have tritium paint on them, and I thought it'd be interesting to compare them from the different decades. On the left, we have the Zodiac Aerospace GMT, which should probably be late 60s. Next, we have a Zodiac Seawolf, which is also late 60s. Next, we have a probably mid-70s Concorde Valjoux 72 chronograph. This was new old stock. Next, we have another Concorde new old stock Geoscope, also probably mid-70s. I don't have anything from the 80s, and as far as the 90s, it's a little bit tricky. I believe technically the CWC chronograph reissue and Royal Navy were released in the early 2000s, but since tritium paint was outlawed before that, I suspect they were probably actually produced in the 90s. And last we have an IWC Mark XII tritium dial. There were also superluminova dials, but I really wanted to get a tritium one. So this would probably be from like 99 or so as well. So now comes the interesting part. I'm going to turn off the lights. They've been charging in the light for quite a while, incidentally. And what do we see? Not surprisingly, the Zodiacs seem to be dying off first, given their age. The 70s watches are starting to fade as well. Interestingly enough, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference if it's a new old stock dial or a used dial of roughly, from going from the 60s to 70s. They're both fading very quickly. And at this point, all that's left are the CWCs and the IWC. The Royal Navy diver seems to be holding off better, perhaps because there's more paint, but the chronograph is starting to fade fast. And the IWC is holding on decently, all things considered, given that probably has less paint application than the Royal Navy by quite a margin. And there we have it. Almost everything has faded. Let's turn the lights back on. Again, this was a pretty unscientific experiment, but it was a little test done on the things I have. Again, I believe the dials are in as good condition as you can. I don't think there's any indication of water egress or anything like that. So it's if in case anyone is interested in picking up watches that have tritium paint, this I think is a interesting glimpse into how vintage watches age. And basically the take-home point here is you can't expect a lot. These watches aren't going to glow in the dark. And while perhaps the newer ones closer to the 2000s might maintain a little bit of low-level illumination throughout the night, you really, if you're going to be buying tritium, it's, I think, definitely for how it ages in the daylight and not what it used to be in the dark, because clearly it's not much. Well, anyway, that's about it for this video, and as usual, thanks for watching.